Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize for the minor delay. Technical improvements were happening, and I shan't stand in the way of those. Welcome on this nice cold Yakima winter evening to the February 18th Board of Directors meeting of the Yakima School Board. This evening, unfortunately, speaking of technical difficulties, we do not have Spanish interpretation services available, so we apologize for the inconvenience. If you need to take advantage of those, please reach out to us and we will follow up with you in the future. If you wish to make public comment this evening, there are two opportunities available for you. The first option is for commenting on agenda items. Hold please, my improvement screen has overtaken my regular screen, but give me 1 second. There we go. First comment option is for commenting on agenda items only. The second option, which comes towards the end of the meeting, is for all other topics. In order to speak tonight, please sign two forms, the sign-in form and the guidelines form located in the back of the room. Barb, would you please take the roll?
Director Navarro Jr.
Present.
Director Rice.
Here.
President Beckett.
Present.
Directors Walker and Vice President Villanueva are excused.
Thank you very much. We are in flu season and we are down a couple of our members this evening for healthcare issues, and we would like to take this opportunity to remind everyone to wash their hands as frequently as possible during the weather. At this point in time, I'd like to invite you to please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I apologize. I thought we were moving straight to the acknowledgement. The character word of the month is persistent, demonstrating determination and continued effort to achieve goals despite challenges.
Today, the schools of the Yakima School District rest on the ancestral lands of 14 confederated tribes and bands of the Yakima Nation.
Hoy las escuelas del Distrito Escolar de Yakima descansan en las tierras ancestrales de las 14 tribus y bandas confederadas de la nación Yakima.
The people of the Yakima Nation inhabited more than 12 million acres.
La gente de la nación Yakima habitó más de 10 billones de acres.
Across Adams, Benton, Chelan, Douglas, Franklin, Grant, Kittitas, Klickitat, and Yakima counties.
En los condados de Adams, Benton, Chelan, Douglas, Grant, Franklin, Kittitas, Klickitat, y Yakima.
Today, we honor those native peoples who are tied to the land through history, legends, and culture.
Hoy honramos a estos pueblos originales que están vinculados en la tierra a través de historias, leyendas y culturas.
We acknowledge the descendants who live in the world today.
Reconocemos a sus descendientes que viven en el mundo de hoy.
We thank the caretakers of this land who have lived here and continue to live here since time immemorial.
Agradezcamos a los guardianes de la tierra, quienes han vivido aquí y continúan viviendo aquí, desde tiempos inmemoriales.
An acknowledgement is a simple, powerful way to show respect.
Un reconocimiento es una manera simple y poderosa de mostrar respeto.
And a step toward correcting the stories and practices that erase indigenous peoples' history and culture.
Y un paso hacia la corrección de las historias y prácticas que borran la historia y la cultura de los pueblos indígenas.
It also honors the truth. También honra la verdad. As a school district, we will continue to build upon our relations with the Yakima Nation.
Como distrito escolar, continuaremos fortaleciendo nuestras relaciones con la nación Yakima.
Thank you, Barb. In our board docs this evening is a link to the obituary for Dan Iman, a educator and coach here in our valley. And I would like to ask all of those in attendance with us tonight to please take a moment of silence in his memory. Thank you. We have two different recognitions this evening. The first is our National Technical Honor Society program. And I believe Raymond, Director Navarro Jr., will begin this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It's with great pleasure that I get to recognize our CT or our YV Tech students. The Board of Directors would like to congratulate the following YV Tech students for their induction into the National Technical Honor Society. The National Technical Honor Society is an educational nonprofit excuse me, that exists to honor, recognize, and empower students and teachers in career and technical education. And we do have quite a few students representing the Yakima School District, and we'll start with AC Davis High School. And if you're present today, any of the students are present, we'll ask you to come up so we can shake your hand. Okay. So first of all, from AC Davis High School, I believe it's Ailey Martinez Casanova. Career pathway is construction and class of 2025. Fernanda Marilee Zepeda Avila. Her career pathway is dental assisting, class of 2025. Marlene Alejandra Garcia Mendez. Career pathway is physical therapy technician, class of 2025. And also Adan Ochoa Perez. Career pathways electrical and class of 2025. Yeah, it's looking dapper this evening. Yeah. Yeah, one more applause for Adan, representing Davis High School. And from Eisenhower High School, Hannah Lynn Tubbs, career pathways automotive tech, class of 2025. Sane Benitez, career pathway dental assisting, class of 2026. Ava Alicia Marie Eagleman, career pathway nursing, class of 2026. Jojo T. Martinez, career pathway computer technician. All right, Jojo's here today. Computer technician, class of 2025. Okay. And continuing from Eisenhower High School, Estrella Alexandra Martinez Sandoval, career pathway dental assisting, class of 2025. And also from Eisenhower High School, David Bahena Derones, career pathway teacher academy, class of 2025. All right. Yakima Online also had a representative, a student that also inducted. That's Elisa Renee Dillinger, career pathway computer technician, class of 2025. And Yakima Satellite, Isaiah Elisea Soria, career pathway entertainment media production, class of 2026. How about an applause for all our students that were inducted? Thank you. Yes.
We also have their faculty advisor, Mr. Clem C., who's here and taking photos, not just some random stranger that walked up. So thank you.
Again, congratulations to our students. Thank you for being here tonight. We are always excited to celebrate your achievements along the way, and it is interesting to see all the different career pathways that are presented as we get to take these opportunities to see the success. So it's very, very fun to watch. Moving forward tonight, we have our National PTA and Founders Day celebration and YSD PTA and Booster Clubs recognitions. And to begin that, I'll turn it over to Director Rice.
Thank you, President Beckett. In honor of National PTA Founders Day, which happened yesterday, the Yakima School District Board of Directors wishes to express gratitude, acknowledging the significant role that their PTAs or booster clubs or other parent organizations have played locally, regionally, and nationally. The efforts of these dedicated volunteers has been instrumental in advancing parent engagement and advocating for the well-being of all children and families, particularly those in our district. I'm going to read through the names, and if anyone sneaked in the back, I'm going to ask that you follow the same pathway that we had the students go. For PTO groups, that's parent-teacher organization groups, from Adams Elementary PTA President Israel Moreno, Adams PTA Vice President Maria Saucedo, Barge Lincoln PTA President Tomas, I can't read that, Tomas Romero. Also from Barge Lincoln, PTA Vice President Natalie Tinajero. From Discovery Early Learning, their parent president is Yamaleth Jacobo Rodriguez. Also from Discovery Early Learning, the parent vice president, Macy Moore. From Garfield, their parent president is Jessica Avarca. Also from Garfield, their parent vice president, Leah Williams. From Gilbert, their parent president is Felicia Snow. Also from Gilbert, their parent vice president is Tracy Anderson. From Hoover Elementary, their parent president is Flor Reyes. Also from Hoover, the parent vice president is Fatima Rodriguez Robledo. From McClure Elementary, their parent president is Kathleen Aragon. Also from McClure, the parent treasurer is Sadie Barnes. And from McClure, the PTA secretary is Heather Flynn. From McKinley Parent PTA Organization, their president is Patricia Casares. Patricia Casares. Also for McKinley, their parent vice president is Irma Mercado. From Nob Hill, their parent president is Francis Logan. Also from Nob Hill, the parent vice president is Megan McCormick. From Ridgeview Elementary, their parent president is Sue Stoneman. From Roosevelt Elementary, their parent president is Michael Kay. And the parent vice president is Caitlin Crutcher. From Wilson Middle School, their parent president is Maritza Madrigal. And the parent vice president from Wilson is Brianne Smith. Your turn.
Thank you, Director Walker. Let's have a round of applause for all of our officers from our PTO groups tonight. We have a number of individuals to recognize who are leaders in our school booster clubs, school and sport booster clubs, I should say. We'd like to recognize those individuals as well. They are Candace Hooks of Davis Parent Boosters, Les Henderson, Davis Boys Basketball, Terry Dove, Davis Band Boosters, Susie Temple from the Davis PTSA, Jennifer Hull of Davis Volleyball Boosters, Marilyn James Tias, Davis Girls Basketball, Jody Gasling of Davis Girls Booster Official, Sherry Williams of Davis Football, Kelly Hall from Davis Fast Pitch, Raquel Cortez from Davis Choir, Antoinette Guerrero of Davis Band, Cheyenne Amaran of Davis Drama, Kevin Collins of Eisenhower Track and Field and Cross Country, Marcy Logan of the Eisenhower Choir, Kristen Gomez, Eisenhower Choir, Kevin Collins again with the Eisenhower Choir Booster Club, Nora Lopez, Eisenhower Boys and Girls Soccer, Katie Allen, Ike Boys and Girls Soccer, Marcy Logan of the Ike Drama Booster Club, Greg Loudon from the Eisenhower Drama Club, Chantel Vargas of Eisenhower Senior Parents Boosters, Gloria Spurrier, Eisenhower Football Boosters, Jessica Chase, Eisenhower Football Boosters, Lillian Vargas Mendoza, Eisenhower Band, Monica Aguirre, Eisenhower Band, April Adkisson, Eisenhower Dance, Brandy Stevens, Eisenhower Boys Basketball, Elizabeth Gonzalez from Ike Boys Basketball, and Holly Stevens from Eisenhower Tennis. Can we please have a round of applause for our parent volunteers from our booster clubs? Don't think we can overestimate how important it is to have these parent volunteers working in all of our school buildings around our district, and we appreciate them very, very much and their service to our district.
And the thousands of hours that they put in collectively. I can tell you that we couldn't do what we have to do in this district without the parent volunteers. Their commitment and their dedication to their children and the students of this district are just invaluable.
Very well said. At this point in time, we'll begin our section of reports to the board. And this evening, we have a report on transportation from the Director of Transportation in the Yakima District, Mr. Art Rodriguez. Welcome, Art. Floor is yours.
Well, good evening, board members and Superintendent Green. Thanks for having me here tonight to talk about transportation. I'd like to start with our current operations that we have for this year. We have 66 drivers out of 69 allocated for our department. That's including on top of that is 3 mechanics, 5 office staff, one permanent trainer. Those 66 drivers are currently servicing 61 routes that service general ed routes, special ed routes, and preschool. That preschool includes ECAP. And so those drivers and currently in the system that we have are servicing what we call a 2-bell system. They're servicing, we have our high school, high school and middle school buildings that run about the same time, 8 o'clock in the morning, and they dismiss at 2:30, 2:35 in the afternoon. So that's 1 bell. And then those same routes are servicing elementary, which we have 14 elementaries that dismiss or that arrive in the morning at 8:45 and dismiss at 3:15. So trying to paint a picture of that as far as currently is that we are doing a lot of work. We've been doing this work under the two-bell system for a long time. We're pretty efficient at it as we are going. But I'd like to share that currently we don't have much room for adjusting in this current model system. But I wanted to share what we're doing now. We are good at what we do at the moment. I think we can do more, and I'll get to that in the next couple of slides. I also want to note it's currently this in our operations is that we boosted our student counts from last year. Fall numbers, we were up 300, and we were up, and then we kind of took a small dip for the winter count. We were up 231 students, so we went from 300 to 231. And usually it drops from the fall is our biggest number that kind of goes down throughout the 3 times that we count throughout the year. So currently we are doing, I think we're doing a great job of what we do now and what we've been doing in the past. So at the end of the last year, we had a lot of reviews on departments about budget cuts and how we can save money and do business differently. So one of the things we did that we tried to do was reduce our charter footprint. And what does that mean? Well, we used a lot of charter buses in the past to try to cover the trips that we had going on in the district. Last year at this time, we had 88 charters used up to this point from September to February. This year, after refocusing what we are doing and how we are doing it, we are at 5 charter buses that we've used this year, which is a huge change in how we do business. One is we are saving about, right now, estimated about $200,000 this year in charter costs. And that savings isn't just for transportation, it's for all departments that use that service. We've kind of committed saying we are going to do that with our own drivers. And by doing that, we are boosting their hours. Our drivers don't require, the cost is cheaper for us to use our private fleet versus our charter fleet that we book through our vendors. So we say there's a considerable price difference in that, in the cost of how we do it, and then if someone else does it for us. That was one of our goals. Our other goals that we had are, of course, reducing overtime in our shop. We had a transition last year where we have 3 positions for our mechanics. We had 1, and we brought on a second one as we were going through retirement and retirement of 2 former mechanics. So we've reduced that footprint. We're under 10 hours for each person this year, which is a great change for us financially. So some of the challenges now that we are operating are now, because we have 61 routes, we have 66 drivers, we're trying to get to 69, is that we are running out of space. Potentially, we have to go farther than that. If we have to go above 69, we are already currently moving things around our yard to make it more efficient to park staff parking. We partnered with Perry Tech to have 10 spots from them in their lot that's next to us. But also just the number of buses that we have and the bus maintenance of our buses. Sometimes we are running, we're running short. We like to have a buffer of how many buses we use daily and have on hand for spares. But on some days we are pushed to that limit with all the trips that are going out that we are managing now. But we are maintaining that. Also want to think about just some of the other challenges, always routing, right? How can we route more efficiently? How can we service more students? What are the main requirements that we do every day? Our main requirements are for sure SPED transportation, McKinney-Ventos, and then of course general ed transportation. So those are the main roles that we have. Those are the challenges every year. How can we do more with what we have now without expanding too much and running out of space, 1, running out of equipment, 2, and then also having enough drivers to do what we want to do every day. So one of the things I was looking at to possibly save more money and also provide more service for our students was look at a 4-bell proposal. So currently I mentioned that we are doing 2 bells. And why would we want to have 4 bells? What does that mean? That means we have 4 bells. We have a bell for middle school, we have a bell for high school, we split our elementaries into 2 groups as a proposal. The challenges for transportation I already mentioned are driver shortages. We are still not at 69. Even though we made a great impact this year, we haven't lost any drivers this year due to income. Like they They aren't leaving us to find a job that gives them more hours somewhere else. We do have the facility challenge that we are doing right now. We're trying to provide a livable income for our drivers, right? So before we took those 88 trips this year away from charter, that increased the drivers that want the more hours so that they can stay and be satisfied and provide for their families. And then the goal right now is also to get to financial solvency. And what I mean by that is, can we save money and still do more? So what can we do more with, right? So if we have 4 bells, we can run a more efficient transportation department. We can provide a better service to our students. And what I mean by that is we can eliminate transfer routes for elementary. We could probably provide direct school busing, which means currently our model is that we have a bus for elementary that picks up at 3 or 4 different elementaries throughout the afternoon before it finally empties out. We could possibly have buses that service just certain schools by themselves, which reduces with student management issues. The principals are dealing with just their students on a bus, not 4 different elementary schools. That's a service we could provide. Doesn't save us money at that point, but it does provide a better service for our elementary students. Of course, more efficient use of transportation resources. If we can reduce the number of buses we need to use per day, that cuts down on our that uses our drivers in a different capacity, provides them more hours because their routes are longer. Currently, our average route time is about for our drivers 5 hours, 5.5. We would boost that to 6.5, based on the number of runs we would do in a day. And so one of the things that we want to do is also attract more students to our transportation. There is a reimbursement for every student that we haul yearly. A couple years ago, transit went to a free, we use transit, first off, we use transit, we have a transit zone for Eisenhower and Davis. Let me take a step back. Those transit zones are used because we cannot provide that service with the number of buses we have. So we have 61 buses servicing high school and middle school, but we have these zones of the city that we don't service. We require those students to use city transit as a source of getting to school. We used to count those students every year. We lost 600 kids in our count because we used to buy those bus passes from city transit, and then the state would reimburse us for buying those and give us a bump for every kid that we provided a pass for. Well, that's free now. And so with going to 4 bells, we believe we can eliminate our transit zones and still provide that service and get those kids a service back to them. We also can look at decreasing the route times of our buses. So they're not hauling so long, but they're hauling as much, same amount of kids. They're shorter route times because they're not going as far. They're not servicing a high school and a middle school, but they're servicing a high school, they're servicing a middle school, and they're servicing an elementary, and then another elementary. So it's time to look at that. I mean, it's time, we can still continue going as we are going now, but we want to offer more service, reduce our costs. I believe that's a new place to look. It's an opportunity for us to look at and see if we can make a change for the future. Give us that capacity to grow, because we would shrink our number of buses that we are using currently, and we can still start to expand service back up. Right now, we really can't expand anything. We can just maintain. So it's an opportunity. Hope it doesn't sound gloomy to you guys, but I also want just to give that out there, put that out there for you. I've been spending half the year looking at that data, trying to come up with models, and I do believe I have a model that would work. I don't have much more to say at the moment, so I wanted to share that piece of you, where we're at currently, what we did financially to help improve, reduce costs for the district. Talk about that challenge of that we're at capacity where I think we're at now. We can maintain it, but do we want to do better? We want to be more efficient. And then what does it look like, and what are the possible opportunities that we can get out of it? So I'm here to answer any questions you have. Do you have any?
Questions from board members this evening?
I have some. First of all, congratulations on your cost savings.
Thank you.
Those were really encouraging numbers.
Yeah, our driver's happy about it too, because they have more work to do and they want to do the work. So I'm proud of them for helping us with that.
And congratulations on paring down the charter costs. I know that those are were pretty extensive
Yes.
under the old system. By going to it, what impact does a 4-bell system in transportation have on kids arriving to school on time? Do you know what is it going to force a change in the bell system for the schools themselves?
Yes. If it was to be adopted, yeah, if it was to be adopted, it's just an idea right now. And it is a change in the model currently of what we would start, right? So yeah, it would impact some students, it would impact families. That's one of the areas of concern that any community would have. But can we provide a better service? Can we provide a more efficient system that's worth it for everybody? And that's where I'm coming from.
Dr. Green, do you want to briefly elaborate on that?
I was just going to share that we have several districts around the state that have gone to a different bus schedule for the reasons that are being provided here. Most recently, when we were in Federal Way and our youngest was in elementary, they went to a 2-bell system where they had half of the elementary school start about 30 minutes earlier and than the other group of elementary schools. And that allowed the buses to make the routes, and there was a significant cost savings to the Federal Way School District. So there are districts that are looking at those opportunities throughout. Although we also understand that there's some work that needs to be done if we're going to go down that route. And so it's not just something that we say will happen.
Can't just snap your fingers and make it work.
Definitely not. So there's some work that needs to be done. And I think that, did you want to make a comment? Good.
You're not.
So what you have before you is, I would say, the standard 2-bell tiered system. So you run a 2 or a 3-bell. So larger districts, so in Issaquah, we had the same thing. We split the elementary schools, and then we had a small gap in middle and high. What that allowed us to do then is you have fewer drivers with longer routes. So when you tier up a system, you have fewer drivers with longer routes. But then I also had the ability to untier the system when late start times were of the issue du jour. And so I went back to a tier system, and that cost us $1.5 million to do it the other way. So that in that model, you have fewer drivers or more drivers driving less time. So basically, just think about it. Your utilization goes up both on drivers and the equipment, so it saves on footprint. The sacrifice generally is the logistics. We are down, when we talk about cost cutting, we're now looking at efficiencies. So it's logistics and operations. This is as far away from the classroom as you can get. So that's where we're at now. We are now down into the couch cushions, as I've discussed many times. We've cut, and now we're looking for operational efficiencies based on just true logistics and how to operate better. So, but I mean, that's where we find ourselves as an organization. But it is a very successful way to use your drivers and make them have a higher wage, and also save the district quite a bit of money.
Thank you. Thank you, Art. It was a great presentation.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I do just for clarification, between right now we have elementary bell schedule and a secondary bell schedule, and the secondary, being middle and high school, are the earliest bells of the day.
Yes.
And the elementary schools are later.
Yes.
We would be expanding or extending into the morning hours the elementary day. So from the standpoint of a member of the Yakima community who's driving to their workplace every morning in Midtown Yakima, downtown Yakima, wherever they might be, this would not necessarily impact extra traffic in those early hour rush times. It would extend traffic from busing systems into later in the morning. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate.
Okay. I think that's
But also,
that is important.
That is correct, and we saw the traffic deteriorate in Issaquah when we went back to a 2-tier because it pushes more routes into peak time. Where as you noted, you spread out the routes, and so you've at night. If it goes later, you're in the back end of the peak run.
Just anecdotally, I think it's an interesting concept. I think the opportunity that the situation we've created and enjoy with Yakima Transit and with our school safety and security groups will be really important to lean in on. But definitely, I think it's important for people to know that that wouldn't affect those people screaming down Summit View for an 8 a.m. appointment. Hopefully, anyway. Don't know who they would be.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have a few
Please,
questions.
please.
So just a comment though, I just wonder how that might impact families which send perhaps different kids to different schools. What I heard correctly is that there could be a difference in start times for different elementary schools. So how would that impact families, right? Where you have older kids taking the younger kids to schools perhaps, and maybe one child going to a school starts at maybe 8 o'clock and another child going to another school starts at 8:15 or 8:30. Just wondering how that might impact our families in terms of many of them work, leaving the home early and leaving older kids in charge of younger kids. So I just wonder if we got any feedback from community.
We haven't
families.
yet because this is the early stages of an idea, but it is something that would have to be, the community would have to have input on this.
Okay.
It will have an impact. It will cause a time for adjustments to be made. But, depending how we put this together, one of the big concerns I put into it was we don't want to switch high school and middle school to start after elementary, because a lot of those families need those older students to come home first. So they'll still be coming home first if this was to be adopted down the road. We want to keep that intact because, they do provide that family support, daycare support for siblings, supervision. And so to mess with that too much would be something that would be definitely have to be talked about with the community and parents and students.
Also, when I see the phrase here, livable income, that concerns me. Can you elaborate so I can understand that better?
So we pay, I would say we pay a competitive rate, a wage for our drivers, hourly rate. The problem this challenge is for our drivers is our contracts for routes, which is our base pay, is a minimum of 4 hours to up to 6 hours, right? And so current model is, I would say, a third of them are about 6 and above based on seniority. They pick the bigger routes, they pick the extra add-ons that go on the day, but the majority of the fleet is under that mark. So most people, when I interview them, say, hey, how many hours can you give me? And I'm quoting them 20 hours to 30 hours, right? So most people want 40 hours. How can we get that boosted up to keep them here? Well, one is trips. I always encourage people to sign up for trips. That boosts your pay. It's not always consistent every week, but if we're doing 88 trips since September, and we're going to end up probably doing, I think last year our numbers were 300 trips that were chartered out. So we're going to have a big rush this summer or the spring, and just keep encouraging our drivers. If you want the hours, this is where we can get the hours. Our pay is competitive with an hourly rate to another hourly rate, city transit's rate, other districts' rates, but they also pay lower because they offer more hours. So we either have to boost our pay per hour to attract drivers and then hope that's enough, or we can boost their hours, keep the pay at a competitive rate that it is, and make reimbursements off that from the state folks who are hauling more students. So it's really a balancing act.
So it's not that we're not offering competitive salaries.
No.
It's more the FTE, right? It's like a 0.5 or a 0.6 FTE.
Yes.
Okay. Also, you mentioned you had 66 drivers and 61 routes.
Yes.
So how does that work?
I think it was 2 years ago, in this part of trying to attract drivers, we would train a driver as a sub if we had all our routes full. Our subs would be used as a need basis, but we always needed them. We never had enough. So after COVID came out, we were looking we lost all of our subs during COVID. We had to retrain and bring them back because they weren't working during COVID. And one of the thoughts was we need permanent subs. We need people that know we're going to be committed to having them work every day. So we basically have a route schedule, but it's not assigned to a specific route. And so that keeps them here because that means they get the benefits. They get to be a part of the seniority basis. Some of them choose that are higher up to be what we call a floater. So there's a substitute that makes their own schedule, basically tells me, hey, I'm available on these days only, or I'm a floater, which is a permanent sub driver that's going to be here every day on that piece.
Well, not all the 66 are full-time permanent bus drivers?
The 66 are permanent.
Okay.
They are permanent, yes. But there are about 7 floaters right now.
All right. And then another question I had, do we have any routes on a daily basis that are canceled?
There are some that are, there have only been a few that have been officially canceled. But we're doing every effort to, on a day that we are short. What I want to say before I go to that, Mr. Navarro, was that our absenteeism for the since January 1st of this year has been anywhere from 14% to 20% a day. That's covering trips, that's covering call-ins, that's covering long-term leaves. Okay, so there's always this fluctuation anywhere between the highest is going to be 20%, the lowest is going to be 10%. And that's somewhere between 9 drivers and 15 drivers a day that we're trying to figure out who's going to cover what. So when I asked this question a couple years before, we would cancel routes maybe once or twice a week, trying to figure out stuff. But now we are trying to be very cognizant of what we can do. We know we have some routes that are smaller. We try to fold them into each other, right? We try to service, we know there's capacity in the morning. So in the morning, we don't normally cancel a route. We are able to, because the numbers are lighter in the morning than the afternoon. So we can combine a route for the morning if we need to. That's what we're doing. We've also reprioritized the last couple of years to make sure we don't cancel any sped routes. That's our main legal obligation to do that service. So we are focused on the gen ed side, trying to shrink that. In the afternoon, that's when we do have a few cancellations in the afternoon, because the buses, the counts swell a little bit. They get there more in the afternoon that ride home. And so we have to be more cognizant of that. But I think we've done a better job this year than we've ever done on cancellations. We do see parent square messages going out, just warning people that, hey, we don't have a driver for this route, but we are servicing it with this route. Trying to give parents an option that we're not leaving kids out there.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. I don't envy you. It sounds like a very complex job and system that you run there with transportation, but thanks for all your work.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rodriguez, for being here. One of my first tours when I became a member of the board a little over 3 years ago was at the transportation facility, and it was fascinating to see. I enjoyed that tour very much. It might be fun for the 5 of us to go down there someday and do that as a group. One of our site visits might be down there at some point in time, but we really appreciate the report. We appreciate the work that your team does, taking care of all of the students in our community on a day-to-day basis. So thank you very much for being here tonight.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. Good night.
Yes, and so I am still being occasionally reminded of the little things. And if you joined us this evening for part of the recognitions, we would love you to know that we appreciate you being here and that we also recognize that your time is valuable. And if you have things and places to be attending to, we won't be offended. We'll take a 2-second or 2-minute break, whatever it might be required. If people would like to excuse themselves, that would be just fine. If you'd like to stay here with us the rest of the evening, that's completely fine too. But we do want you to know that that is completely understandable if you need to move on with your evening. So at this point in time, we are moving to updates from members of the board. Do either of the members of the board have anything to do? Martha?
Thank you, President Beckett. We are in week 6 of the legislative session, and things are starting to move a little bit due to the pressures of deadlines. The first deadline for moving bills out of their House of Origin Policy Committee, the cutoff deadline for that is this Friday. And that would be if there was a bill put into House Education, for example, that bill would have to have been heard, gone into approved through executive session, and then it moves out and it moves over to the Senate Education Committee. So they have to be out of their House of Origin Policy Committee. If there is a fiscal note on it that has a different deadline, that would be next Friday, the 28th, for policies, for bills to be out of the House of Origin Fiscal Committee. So because of these deadlines and because there are so many bills rushing through, things are getting pretty condensed as far as getting stuff heard and getting things moving through the legislature this week. There are a number of bills that are still valid and will continue to be valid until at least Friday. I get a weekly, I think it's weekly, update from the State School Directors Association government relations folks that gives me the status of the various bills that WASDA is watching, in addition to what they call the Bill Watch. This is a PowerPoint presentation that they send out. And I can forward those on to you if you'd like, if you're interested in them. If not, I can just keep an eye on what's going on. And if we need to provide some or sign in for some testimony, they're doing remote testimony, allowing that again this year, which is quite handy for those of us who live on this side of the hill. But just know that there are a lot of people that are signing up for testimony for the bills.
I would say, especially as the session goes on, if you
We'll
want
get-
to send those to the rest of us, that would be great.
Okay, great. I'll do that. Oh, one more thing. There has surfaced a fair amount of interest on a simple majority for bonds bill. You'll remember that in order to pass a bond, you've got a 60% passage rate requirement, as well as a 40% of those who approve it. 40% of those who approve it.
In the prior November general election.
Yeah, so last year's general election, you have to have 40% of those votes, that number, must have voted in the bond election. So you've got 2 points of reference that you have to 2 little barriers that you have to climb over. This bill there was talk of a 55% passage rate, 52% passage rate. This bill, which I don't know that I have the bill number, this bill would be a 50% plus one. And that's getting a fair amount of interest on the part of legislators. So we'll see where that one goes.
And then Director Rice, I believe that's a constitutional amendment that still requires
Yes.
vote of the people, just for
Yeah.
a larger community
So it has to
understanding.
be passed out with a 2/3 majority out of the legislature. And then it has to go before the general public for a simple majority vote.
Identical to what we did for simple majority and levies back in.
Because it is constitutional. It's in the Constitution. So it won't, if it passes out, it won't happen right away. It has to go through like the second layer of voting from the public.
Well, as always, thank you for representing us with WASDA's Legislative Affairs Committee and keeping an eye on a lot of different bills.
A lot of laws.
A lot of different bills during the session. So thank you for that. Dr. Green, would you like to move to the superintendent's update tonight?
Thank you. And building off of what Director Rice has shared, I've been to Olympia once last week to lobby significantly throughout the day. I've been able to testify virtually on 4 different occasions in the last 6 weeks. So things are moving forward. So I won't repeat any of the items that were shared by Director Rice because we're getting the same information just from different sources. So thank you, Director Rice, for sharing that information. The Olympia visitation last Wednesday was a success. I was able to meet with 2 legislators, 2 representatives, 2 senators, attend one of the sessions while I was there, and then a unique opportunity to meet with several lobbyists from across the education world as they convened to plan and talk about where certain bills were at certain moments. And that will continue throughout the next month or so until we finish the session. The only other item that I have to share with you is one of mutual benefit between Yakima Education Association and the district. There was outreach on the part of WEA to the lobbyists that we have in the management side, and a joint editorial between myself and the Yakima Education Association president, Franny Guerrero, has been written and is in the hands of our Washington Education Association. It does call out the inequities that exist in the state funding model that we currently have. It calls out the paramount duty of the state and challenges our state lawmakers to fulfill their constitutional obligation, recognizing that what's happening in Yakima is something that is resonating now across the entire state. So I'm very excited about the coming together of YEA President Franny Guerrero and myself and being able to advocate collectively and collaboratively on the behalf of the district itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Green. We move to our calendar update section, which in board docs, you will see a lengthy list of board meetings, school events, varsity sporting events, district events, etc. Is there anything specific that you would like to call out this evening?
The only thing that I would call out is that our March 3rd meeting is a site visitation, and it will be at Wilson Middle School. So that's a 4:00 meeting.
So look forward to that. The second part of that item on our agenda is for future agenda topics. Does either member present tonight wish to suggest any item for a future agenda topic?
I think given everything that's happening back in Washington, D.C., and the reliance that we have on federal funding in our budget, I think that there might be some value in whatever it is that we know. And I know that we don't know too much right now because things are happening fast and furious. If we could get an update or just bring us all up so that we're all on the same page of what impacts are rolling down the highway toward us. Is that light at the end of the tunnel a guidepost or is it a train? And I fear that it's a train. But if we could get an update on that, I think that might be of interest to the board, and it might be of interest to the viewing public as well.
I agree with Martha. Thank you, Martha, for bringing that up, because I do know that the current administration has thoughts about Department of Education, right, as an institution that's been for so long, but also some of the policies or the executive orders that he's signed in terms of DEI, diversity, and so forth, and how that may impact our district, since he's made a lot of threats in regards to that, right? So I agree with Director Rice that it'd be a good discussion or some good information to have and a discussion for in the future.
Thank you both. I think that's an excellent suggestion. And I would like to just thank Dr. Green and Bob Noe both for the conversations and advice that they've both provided in the last couple of meetings that we've had as we put agendas together to be focused on the here and now and the present and the legal, and both state and federal law both play into our world here very closely. And I have appreciated your guidance on those items, and look forward to being able to further that conversation with our board in the future. So thank you for those suggestions. That turns us to much lighter matters. Financial update from Mr. Cooper. Thank you, Jake, for being here. The floor is yours.
Was that a like a challenge or? So before I begin my presentation, I want to talk about the calendar generally. I'm not talking about the school calendar, but our budget calendar. So Director Rice talked about the ongoing legislative session, but I want to let you know what is likely to happen. So March revenue forecast is not until March 20th. Historically, the chambers will not release a budget until after the March revenue forecast. For those of you who've been hanging around a long time, that is generally the normal cadence. So, because of course they want to have the freshest revenue numbers possible before they create a budget. Sign a die is April 27th. Sign a die is the last day of the legislative session. The statutory deadline for any certificated reductions is May 15th per state law. Of course, there's a strange part of the statute that lets you extend if the legislature goes beyond. I do not recommend ever using that statute because there's no way that if they finish, a district could ever fulfill their legal obligations, right, between May 15th and June. I do fear potentially a long session. They haven't talked special session yet, but as we know, when there's budget troubles, we have a new governor and the legislature that's not necessarily getting along with the governor, like not even allowing him in the House chambers, as an example. So we have all those things swirling around us. It reminds me of the time during the Great Recession when we had the same issues, right? Large deficits, looming revenue forecasts, and then downward spiral. So I just want everybody to be patient. So last year we were able to start early because we were able to identify a large deficit, and it was the second year of the biennium, right? Most often, second year of the biennium, they kind of re-up the budget, don't do a lot of work, so much more clarity. So I just want everybody to know the calendar we're looking at. Also, to bring it to the near term, January is when budget becomes actual. Very important time for CFOs because now we start buzzing around because we've done these estimates, projected enrollment, and different drivers in the budget, and now things are real. So I did a reconciliation with staff at the end of January and all the puts and takes. So I overprojected high school enrollment, as we've discussed in the BEA. However, I was conservative in CTE, transitional bilingual, et cetera. So after all the puts and takes, we're only about $750,000 to $1 million less than projected. So the budget you have adopted and we put forward is very solid. So I want you to know that. When we go to actuals, that's the most important time and you're able to adjust. So near term, our apportionment and how everything came in, up in CTE, up in SPED, up in TBIP, down in BEA, but the wash was only about $750,000 to $1 million. So that's of your $280+ million budget, revenues right about where we needed to be. So I wanted to go through that in the near term. Superintendent and I talked yesterday or today, and we talk every day, that probably the first board meeting in March will kind of provide a update of where we're at. And I want to say that with a grain of salt because I talked to the administrative staff last week. And right now, as I call it, the puts and takes, the swings are very large. So the IPD or COLA, I've discussed before, every percent is about $1 million for us on the local levy. Governor Inslee's budget came out with 2.4% IPD. That's $2.4 million for the levy. Our increase in levy from one year to the next is only 2.6. So anytime we get a COLA, it's going to suck all that money right out of the system. That's what's been happening these last few years. Large COLAs, good for the individual, I say, bad for the organization financially. So we don't know about that. There was also in the budget a reduction in retirement contributions on the employer side. That's like a reverse COLA. So they lower it, we save $1 million. So the way they have it now, if the employer contribution gets lowered, we'd save $1 million. So you can see on the swings, they're rather large. And we don't know about LEA, which is a huge driver for us. And then there's also a swirling, and I also saw that Bob Ferguson continued to support, as an example, strip away national board certification funding, which, but also potentially save the district money because we have employees that are not funded by the state. that we also pass those funds through. So that being said, I just want you to know the big picture. We are not hiding the ball or not being transparent. We just got actual numbers, and now we're moving forward, and we have huge swings in the legislature, which is this time of year, but we'll have to wait a little bit longer because it's sign or dies not until the 27th of April. That being said, we'll get to the presentation. You heard me say many times, your Chief Financial Officer, cash is king, and that still is the case. So very important as we continue to implement systems. My office and me in particular personally, there's a tighter level of control as we build these systems. And so the budget is now performing as I anticipated to. And I know that sounds funny, but we talked about behavior of a large budget like this. But for now, month to month, I lost my deck. A man with no deck. Okay, now, cash flow line, budget to actuals continue to be stable. As the enrollment is flattened out, and we will continue to lose students slightly as the new year progresses, as Art talked about. But what I want to point your attention to is that. Now, I only bring that to your attention because it is a smoking projection and accurate for the month, because I do enjoy that. But as you can see, I do want, and I talk about that trough in the middle, right? The trough in the middle tells me a lot as your CFO when it comes to cash. So right now, that trough, remember, we have $4 million of extra cash in there for liquidity purposes. So if we didn't have our tax anticipation note, we'd be about $4 million in the trough. You see the trough is 8. That's a good sign. We have stabilized in the middle of the fiscal year. And then, of course, we'll watch with make sure the taxes come in and our spending continues to move in line. But as for now, cash is in line with projection, most importantly. And we should see that trend continue as we move forward. Okay. There's a revenue comparisons we talked about. As you can see, the teal bar is the actuals. As the revenue comes in, since we are a reimbursement basis, you can see sometimes they lag, but month to month, revenue, except for that October period, is very close to projection. Again, cash flow is what we're really watching at this point in time. And as we drill in, there's the expenditures. So as noted earlier in the presentation, September to December, slightly below budget. We're slightly above our projection in January. That was the payroll just was a little bit larger than anticipated. But as you can see, our budget to actuals continue to be in line. So we're not overspending our budgeted amounts. The MSOC, material supplies and operating costs, always more volatile. The district produced a significant amount of MSOC budgets. As you can see, if you look at the historic, as example, month to month, ESSER, of course, kind of raises up those numbers in those earlier fiscal years, but you can see month to month, we are down for the most part when it comes to our MSOCs, which is good. We are not in a place right now, our budget, where we can make many more material supply and operating cost reductions, because if you get close to that mid 80s in labor, you really don't have enough material supplies and operating costs to keep the lights on, buy curriculum, keep your safety and security up in infrastructure. Additionally, since Yakima does not have a significant amount of capital money, actually no capital money, all the pressure to keep our buildings up to date is in the general fund. So we expend more in our general fund than most districts do because we just don't have the capital funding. Any questions? I know I covered a lot of ground, but I thought it would be good to cover the dates, but in particular, since it's such a long session, and also let you know that the CFO was pleased with the January actuals compared to budget, and that this cash flow projection was
for
awesome.
the smoking projections that we had here for January.
Look, as a CFO, you got to take the good when you can get it. I mean, you saw how my last fall and summer went. Okay, so, but all in all, we are stabilizing, which is always the goal. My goal is to be stable and boring financially, not personally, and we'll keep you updated and watch the legislature.
I do have a question.
Go ahead, Raymond.
Yeah, so it's regards to enrollment. You said a flat line, but I was looking at that chart. I don't know what page it is, but it looks like it looks like it's indicating an upward change, right?
It is slightly up.
Except for November. So September, there was plus 66
Yep.
from previous year.
And then
October plus 32, and then it dropped 32 for
And then we
November.
likely will see a decrease throughout the rest of the year. That's generally what happens.
I'm just trying to grab onto maybe it's a trend or something, because it's increased over the last year. So,
And next year's projection, I mean, next year I have us down about 220, and really that is only roll up and roll out.
Yeah.
So, and the birth rate is still, our kindergarten class is right around 1,000. And so
hopefully
I
that's
think
a good
our
trend.
precipitous decline right now is likely slowed. We don't know, of course, there are macro things that may affect our enrollment, such as immigration policy, that we can't model. That, you know, I don't have any data to determine how that's going to affect us. And Director Rice, on the federal front, my colleagues, I know a few, they don't believe like the big three will go away. I'm thinking USDA, title, and IDEA, right? Those are the biggest chunks of federal money for us.
But if he shuts the Department of Education down, who is going to monitor those things?
That I don't know.
mean-
Nor shall I. I do know historically, for example, some of those programs were administered under different departments way before I was contemplated, many decades ago. And so I don't know. Like USDA is an example. They administer our food service, so that isn't DOE. And then so other funds as well flow through other departments. And so, you know, we'll see. But again, I'm not hearing from. I have a few friends that are actually pretty close in DC, and who knows. But what they're telling me is they do believe like the big three will remain intact. Other than that, which is our big funding drivers for us, right? Those are the biggest. But
I
that's
find
all.
it hard to believe that they would give us money and not monitor that. I could be wrong.
I did not say that there wasn't going to be any monitoring. And mind you, our federal money, and I do want people to know this, our federal money locally is some of the most highly audited and regulated funds of any funding you can get. We have auditors come in every year and for several hundred hours, and every year they have to look at between 25 and 50% of all of our federal funds in direct audit. So those funds are audited heavily.
Mr. Kuiper, one more from Director. Noel, please.
So with just a change in the first 5 months, does that impact our budget, our projections? What does it do to that about our projections for this current year?
Well, that is in part why when I talked about our January apportionment becoming very close to actual, those were part of those numbers.
Okay.
And the other reason too, and I will give credit where credit is due, is our special education is up nearly $500,000 because our IEPs are in compliance. I mean, that's a $500,000 swing alone just in our IEPs. So efficiency, and then of course, just hard work by a lot of staff is increasing revenue. So.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. We appreciate the report very much. This takes us to our first opportunity for public comment this evening. Barb, do we have anyone signed up for comment this evening on agenda items?
Not on this section.
Excellent, thank you. Then that will take us to the approval of our consent agenda. The consent agenda this evening includes the approval of minutes of January from 2025, notification of approval of warrants for January of 2025, approval of personnel action items, and the budget status reports for January of 2025. Does any member wish to have any item from the consent agenda removed for individual discussion tonight? Hearing none, then can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda from tonight's agenda, please?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of approving the consent agenda this evening, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Section E is our approval section, and the first item this evening is the approval of our superintendent contract. Director Rice or Dr. Green, do you wish to speak to this first, or to the process first before we move to the action item?
We have the president delegated to me the evaluation process and discussion with Superintendent Green on his contract. for this year. And that has been accomplished. And we are at a point now where all parties are agreed on the elements of the contract, and it is submitted to the board for approval.
Thank you, Director Rice. We have a requested action item that the Board of Directors approve the superintendent's contract as discussed. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to say I do appreciate the superintendent's work that we've seen so far, right? Lots of good things that are happening in the district, lots of good initiatives, and just what comes to mind, and I know this happened a few years ago, but just a change in the culture, change in how, relations with our unions and so forth, which I believe just it's resulting in big dividends now and making, we're making our district a stronger district. So I just appreciate the work you do, Dr. Green, and just the continuous work, right? The continuous moving forward to serve all the students in the Yakima School District, bringing in quality, top-notch superintendents and directors and staff and so forth that are joining in with the effort to move forward and helping all our kids move forward in their education and to provide that quality education to all our students. I know that we may not have seen the results that we've wanted this year, but there's so many different variables and factors that are coming up against us, and I know that the faculty and staff are doing an awesome job as well in terms of following the leadership of Dr. Green and moving forward towards that vision, right? That all our students in the Yakima School District can be successful in education and also their personal dreams and goals. So I just wanted to make mention of that. I do appreciate the work you're doing, Dr. Green, and working with the board, and I look forward to continuing the work that we're committed to doing in the city of Yakima. Thank you.
I would add, again, thank you and appreciate the opportunity to work with you in this endeavor. I also want to say a special thank you to Director Walker and to Director Rice for the work that you've done with the evaluation process over the last couple of years, and for the extra hours and work that you put into that. I think it bodes well for the entire board as a body, and we recognize the community input that you've taken into that, as well as our staff input and even student input with our Student Voice Council. So we appreciate that very much. Hearing nothing else, Barb, I would like to ask that we please call a roll tonight on this item.
Director Navarro Jr.,
Aye.
Director Rice,
Aye.
President Beckett.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you, Barb. That takes us to section 2, which is our second opportunity for comments this evening from the public. This would include comments on any item not on the agenda. And it looks like we have Mr. McKenna is signed up to speak. Steve, would you like to come to the podium and address the group? Welcome, Steve. How are you? Oh, good. Glad you're here. Thank you.
A retired educator. That's all I got to say with their idea that how to deal with government is to break things and then pick up the pieces later. It's a lot easier to break stuff than it is to make it. And probably about a year from now, we'll figure that out. But anyway, I like to, these days, sometimes I'm bored, so I look at OSPI stats. And some of the stats that I've noticed, you just approved a new contract for the superintendent. I noticed that his overall pay, according to Table 15, Route 11, on the school apportionment and financial services, school district personnel summary profiles, is $372,079 with 85,415 of that is additional pay. I've noticed that still the superintendent works the least number of days in the county for sure. And I could only find a few, the state average for a superintendent, the number of days in their contract is 256.9 days, according to OSPI. There are, I believe he's number 10 in the state. I know our numbers for students are, I believe, around 19 or 20. And I could only find 2 districts that get as much or a little bit more extra pay, Richland and Renton. So anyway, I would just say that last month I gave you a copy of the top positions of the governor, the lieutenant governor, district attorney, and so on. And I will say that as a community, we're paying a lot of money, more than what the governor makes to the superintendent. And even our assistant superintendents all make more than the governor in Yakima. And in looking through OSPI stats and many districts and what they're paying their superintendents, I'm sure that has something to do with financial problems in many school districts. And if you tool through some of those tables, like Table 15, Duty Route 11, and 12, you will find that information. And as a taxpayer, it makes me concerned that we're paying a lot more than the governor's salary, over and the projected government salary for, sorry, if you want me to, is effectively right now, current salary is $204,205, $218,744 for next year. And the following year, it'll go up to $234,275, and that's for the governor. All the other positions all make less than that, including the superintendent of public instruction for the entire state. His salary is $166,762. Next year, it'll be $171,765, and the following year in 26, $175,200. Just letting you know.
Thank you, Mr. McKenna. Thank you for being here tonight. I don't see anyone else signed up on the sign-in sheet. Do we have a need for an executive session this evening? I don't believe that we do. Our next scheduled meeting is our March 3rd, 2025 meeting. We'll be meeting at 4 p.m. at Wilson Middle School. We have no further business on the agenda this evening. So at this point, we are adjourned. Thank you all for being here.